The first hour after payday decided the whole week. Here are 25 forgotten payday habits from the 1930s, rituals that stretched every dollar across rent, groceries, and coal. Each habit reveals how working families survived when wages were low and risks were everywhere. 25. Rent and utilities paid the same day cash hit the hand. Payday didn't mean celebration. It meant responsibility. The very first dollars went to the landlord and the utility office. Rent often ate up a third of a worker's weekly wage, and lights or gas had to be prepaid to avoid disconnection. Families knew if they delayed even a day, temptation could swallow the money. Paying rent and utilities immediately meant survival. A roof overhead and the lamps burning were worth more than any fleeting luxury. 24. Kitchen table, cash split, turned wages into envelopes. Once the pay envelope came home, it was dumped on the kitchen table. Mothers and fathers split it into smaller envelopes. Rent, food, coal, clothing, savings. Coins clinked as each pile was sealed away. This physical division meant no guessing. If the grocery envelope ran out, meals got simpler, not borrowed. It was budgeting you could touch, a ritual repeated every week across America, keeping discipline alive when banks, ledgers, and credit cards weren't part of working-class lives. 23. Hidden emergency stash tucked away from temptation. Every smart household had a little hidden stash. Sometimes it was a few folded bills behind a loose brick, inside a sugar tin, or under a mattress seam. It wasn't much, maybe $2 or $3, but it could mean medicine for a child or train fare in an emergency. Families learned not to trust banks after waves of collapses. A hidden stash wasn't just cash. It was peace of mind when the world outside felt unstable. 22. Bulk staples bought on payday kept families fed. The heaviest payday ritual was hauling home flour, sugar, beans, and lard in bulk. Buying 25 pounds of flour or 10 pounds of potatoes stretched wages further than daily trips to the store. Catalogs even sold family barrels of staples for discounted prices. Bulk buying meant fewer chances to splurge, fewer store trips, and full pantries that reassured parents. When cupboards looked stocked on payday night, families knew the week wouldn't end in hunger. 21. One small planned treat made sacrifice sustainable. Discipline didn't mean joyless living. Most families budgeted for one small treat, maybe a nickel movie, an ice cream cone, or a cigar for Dad. That tiny indulgence wasn't waste. It kept spirits up in a world of relentless sacrifice. Kids especially looked forward to a candy bar or soda, knowing it was planned, not stolen from rent money. The trick was balance. A controlled treat on payday gave everyone motivation to endure another hard week. 20. Strict no bar stop rule kept money at home. Payday often tempted men toward the saloon. A round of beers could drain $1 fast, nearly a day's wages in the 1930s. Families laid down strict rules. No bar stops before rent, groceries, and coal were covered. Women sometimes met their husbands at the factory gate to walk wages safely home. This wasn't about joy killing. It was about survival. Every pint skipped meant bread, milk, and heat for children, not another week of debt or hunger. 19. Church tithe or charity donation sealed social standing. Even in the Depression, many families set aside a small percentage, often 10 cents on the dollar, for church or charity. It wasn't just faith, it cemented dignity and belonging. Neighbors noticed who contributed, and in tight-knit towns, generosity returned in hard times. Some churches even maintained emergency food cupboards for donors. In 1933, surveys showed nearly half of working-class families still gave weekly offerings. For many, it was both a spiritual anchor and a community insurance policy. 18. Shoes repaired on payday before buying new pairs. Shoes were expensive, often $3 or more, equal to a quarter of weekly wages. Instead of replacing them, families rushed shoes to cobblers on payday for half-dollar repairs, new soles, patches, or polished uppers. Children's shoes were resoled 2 or 3 times before replacement. A well-maintained pair could last years. Cobbler shops thrived during the 1930s, some working overnight after payday floods of customers. Shoe repair wasn't just frugality. It was a necessity, keeping feet dry on factory floors and farm fields. 17. Doctor and dentist bills cleared early to avoid shame. Medical debts carried deep social weight. Families often paid the doctor or dentist first thing on payday, even before groceries. Doctors kept handwritten ledgers, and unpaid names risked quiet embarrassment in church or town meetings. A tooth extraction might cost $2, while childbirth could run $25, a fortune then. Skipping bills wasn't an option, as word spread quickly in small communities. Clearing medical debts was both survival and reputation management, protecting families from whispers as much as from illness. 16. Coal or wood for heat, prepaid before winter shortages. Heating homes devoured budgets. A ton of coal costs $6 to $8, and a family might burn several through winter. On payday, smart households prepaid for coal or wood before prices spiked in December shortages. Coal yards often offered discounts for early cash buyers. For rural homes, prepaid wagon loads of firewood ensured no shivering nights. Skipping this payday ritual could mean choosing between heat and food by February. Stocking up early turned wages into literal warmth for the months ahead. 15. Weekly grocery allowance fixed in coins, not promises. Payday meant coin counting at the kitchen table. Families often set aside exact grocery money, maybe $2 or $3, in a separate purse. Cash only meant mothers carried jingling coins to market. No IOUs, no tabs. In 1932, food consumed about 25 to 30% of a household's income, so every nickel mattered. When the purse ran dry, suppers shrank to beans or bread. It was strict discipline. Coins dictated menus, not cravings, and it kept households from tumbling into crushing store credit. The 14. Train or trolley fare set aside to protect job security. Getting to work was non-negotiable. A week's trolley fare in cities might cost 50 cents. Train tickets for rural commuters often topped $1. Families tucked this money away first, sometimes in a labeled envelope. Knowing missed work meant lost wages. During the Depression, foremen replaced absent workers without hesitation. Men literally protected their jobs one fare at a time. Travel cash wasn't convenient. It was insurance that paydays would keep coming, even if it meant less on the dinner table. 13. Debt collectors paid first to stop knocks at the door. Debt in the 1930s was more public than today. Collectors arrived at homes, workplaces, even church steps. To avoid humiliation, families paid installments first thing on payday. A furniture bill might demand $1 weekly, while loan sharks charged ruinous interest, sometimes 20% or more. Meeting these payments bought peace and privacy. Many remembered the shame of collectors pounding on doors, neighbors watching. Clearing debts early wasn't just financial. It was a shield against community gossip and constant dread. 12. Sewing and mending supplies, restocked before fun money. Spools of thread, buttons, and fabric patches were payday staples. A 10-cent packet of needles could extend wardrobes for months, saving families from costly new clothes. Women turned wages into survival by repairing shirts, hemming skirts, or patching socks. Department stores knew this, dedicating entire counters to cheap sewing supplies. In 1934, the average family spent less than 10% of income on new clothing, relying heavily on repair. Without payday mending budgets, clothes wore thin, and dignity went with them. 11. Work clothes purchased before fashion extras. Factories and farms chewed through overalls, gloves, and boots. Payday often began with replacing a torn pair of trousers or buying heavy socks, essentials for keeping jobs and preventing injury. A pair of sturdy overalls might cost $1.25, a painful but unavoidable chunk of wages. Families prioritized this over fashion. Sunday dresses or hats waited until the basics held together. Protecting work clothes wasn't vanity, it was survival, ensuring breadwinners stayed employed and safe in punishing conditions. 10. Children's school fees or lunch pennies set aside education carried hidden costs, pennies for lunch milk, notebooks, or weekly school fees. Parents often tucked nickels into envelopes marked for children, knowing embarrassment at school could scar worse than hunger. In 1933, a notebook cost 5 cents, chalk another 2. Families prioritized these tiny expenses, even when cupboards were bare. Sacrifices ensured kids weren't sent home empty-handed, preserving pride and opportunity. For many, investing a dime in schooling felt as crucial as paying rent or coal. 9. Emergency doctor visit cash held in a cigar box. Unexpected illness terrified families. A doctor's house call could cost $2, nearly a full day's wages. To avoid panic, some households stashed small bills and coins in old cigar boxes labeled for emergencies. These boxes sat high on shelves or under beds, never touched for groceries or toys. By the Depression's peak, over half of households reported delaying medical care due to cost. The cigar box wasn't luxury. It was a desperate lifeline against accidents, fever, or sudden childbirth. 8. Layaway down payments scheduled right after wages. Stores advertised layaway as the working man's credit. A down payment, sometimes 25 cents, secured an item, with weekly installments made from each payday. Families used this for coats, blankets, or Christmas gifts. Unlike loans, no interest accrued, only discipline. By 1937, major department stores reported thousands of layaway accounts, proof of its popularity. The trick was acting fast on payday before money vanished. Layaway turned fragile wages into future comforts without risking debt spirals or loan sharks. 7. Boarders' rent collected and applied instantly to bills. Taking in boarders was common, single men, migrant workers, or even cousins. Their rent, usually $3 to $5 weekly, was often collected right on payday night. Families applied it instantly to household bills, ensuring boarder money didn't disappear into extras. In cities, entire neighborhoods of lodger families thrived this way. The 1930 census found nearly 11% of urban households rented out rooms. It was less side income than survival, a ritual that turned spare space into guaranteed light, heat, and food. 6. Family council at the table before any spending payday evenings often meant a family meeting. Parents laid wages on the table, children watched, and every expense was discussed aloud. Decisions like bread or beans this week, or new boots now or later, were collective. Kids learned money's weight early, shaping habits for life. Diaries recall how even 8-year-olds offered opinions. These councils weren't democracy. They were a necessity, keeping everyone accountable. In households where every penny mattered, family councils transformed payday from private stress into shared discipline. 5. Farmers' feed or seed cash protected in a separate jar. Rural families set aside payday money for livestock feed or next season's seed. A bushel of seed corn could cost $1.25, chicken feed even more. Without it, future income collapsed. Many farmers used labeled jars or tin boxes to guard this cash from daily raids. By 1935, more than 200,000 farms failed partly because seed money ran short. Protecting it on payday meant survival. Ensuring animals ate, fields were planted, and next year promised something beyond hunger. 4. Weekly union dues or lodge fees sealed in an envelope belonging to a union, fraternal lodge, or mutual aid society carried real protections: strike funds, funeral costs, sick benefits. Dues were modest, often 25 cents to $1, but missing payments meant losing support. Families sealed these coins into envelopes on payday before touching groceries or treats. In 1930, unions represented about 3.5 million workers, many relying on these funds in layoffs. It wasn't optional spending, it was buying security, solidarity, and a safety net no government yet provided. 3. Small savings deposit marched to the bank on payday. Even pennies counted. Some families forced themselves to deposit a dime or quarter on payday, walking it straight to the bank before temptation struck. Savings accounts grew slowly, but the discipline mattered. By 1936, national savings deposits had fallen by half since 1929, yet thrifty households still scraped what they could. Kids often accompanied parents, learning thrift firsthand. The ritual wasn't about getting rich. It was about proving control when chaos reigned, one small deposit at a time. 2. Leftover coins rolled into paper wrappers for next week. Loose change piled quickly in kitchens. Instead of frittering it away, families saved coins in jars, then rolled them into paper wrappers on Sunday night. A neat stack of quarters might cover Monday's trolley fare, while pennies bought bread. Banks accepted rolled change directly, making it feel like real money. This habit stretched tiny leftovers into serious help. Even 2 dimes could tip the week between hunger and supper. Payday discipline didn't stop Friday. It rolled forward every week. 1. Nothing on credit, cash-only life, kept families disciplined. The ultimate payday rule was brutally simple: no credit. Families lived within the pay envelope, even if it meant beans for dinner 3 nights running. Credit tabs at stores often ballooned with crushing interest, and loan sharks lurked for the desperate. By 1933, unemployment topped 25%, yet most households still avoided formal debt. Cash-only living kept spending visible and limited. If the money wasn't there, the purchase wouldn't happen. It was harsh, but it kept families from sinking deeper. Thanks for watching. If these forgotten payday habits gave you a new perspective, check out our other videos for more hidden lessons from history. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss what's coming next.